And welcome to this. Sorry?
They're not listening. Bang your gavel.
Good evening. Right, and welcome to this meeting of Planning Committee A on Wednesday the 14th of May 2025. Before we start, I need to read the webcasting introduction. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to turn the microphones on before speaking and turn them off when they have finished. Thank you. You may have noticed I'm short of a Vice Chairman, and with the committee's consent, can I ask Councillor Williamson to take place of my Vice Chairman? Thank you. Right, my name's Councillor Stephen Heather and I'm the Chairman for tonight's meeting. To my left I have Mary Claire Tovey from the Planning Department, and also on Teams from the Planning Department we have Mohammed Rahman and Suki Dadwar, and from our Legal Department is Amanda Apcar, also on Teams. To my right I have my Vice Chairman now, Councillor Williamson. To his right, from Democratic Services, is Laura Kerman, and to the far right is, from the webcasting people, Steve Mitchell. Thank you. Public speakers, you would have been briefed by Democratic Services before you come in, but I just remind you, you've got 3 minutes to state your case. You turn the microphone on when you start and turn it off when you're finished. Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Chairman, we've received several apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Lyon, Bassett, Morgan, Cohen, Will Kaufman and Councillor Sharif.
Thank you. Substitute members?
We have substitution in order, in the same order of Councillor Holly Whitbread, Councillor Bedford, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Owen, Councillor Wiskin and Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, any items on the agenda? Councillor Owen.
Yeah, item number 9 and 10, I'm the Town Councillor for, and item 11, I'm the Ward Councillor for, and I'll go over there when I do 11.
Thank you. Can I confirm the minutes of the last meeting held on the 2nd of April 2025 has been a true record? Thank you. Right, the first item on the agenda then is agenda item 7, planning application EPF/1356/24, the Paddocks, Stanford Rivers Road, Ongar, on pages 9 to 44 of the agenda. And Suki Dadwar will be taking us through this on Teams. Please, Suki.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you all hear me? Yep. Thank you. Before I start the presentation, I would just like, for the avoidance of doubt, to alert members to pages 20 to 21 of the agenda, where a contribution towards community facilities of £37,200 and 75 pence is listed both on pages 20 and 21. Please note that this is a typo and this contribution is only requested once. Thanks. The application site relates to a field on the eastern side of Stamford Rivers Road. Is outlined in red and is located on the southeast side of the Grade 2 listed Marden Ash House and adjoins the southern boundary of the Grade 2 listed Dyers. A public right-of-way runs to the south of the site. The site is allocated for residential development under ONG R6 within the local plan. Adjoining the northern boundary is the allocated site under ONG R7, also for housing. The application seeks permission for 36 dwellings, of which 14 will be affordable, along with associated estate roads, parking, open space, and enhanced landscaping. The schedule of accommodation is made up of 5 one-bed units, 7 two-bed dwellings, 13 three-bed dwellings, and 11 four-bed dwellings in either a terrace, semi-detached, or detached form. New access will be created from Stamford Rivers Road. 89 car parking spaces are proposed, of which 9 will be visitor. The level of parking provided meets the requirements of the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan. It is presented to members tonight as it has received over 5 objections from the local community. The concerns raised are listed on pages 12 and 13 of the agenda. They include harm to highway safety, increased traffic congestion, harm to the special significance of the surrounding heritage assets, lack of local infrastructure, loss of green space and natural habitat, overdevelopment, and the development being out of character with the area. This slide shows the street scenes of the houses. The top row is of the terraced houses fronting Stamford Rivers Road. The middle row is of the eastern boundary of the site looking west, and the bottom row is of the houses along the northern section of the development. Materials include buff and red brick, black boarding for the walls, along with grey or red roof tiles. The proposal provides native woodland on land fronting plot 1. Sustainable drainage is provided in the eastern section of the site. A native tree buffer will surround the perimeter of the site. Native hedgerows will be planted to the front of the site to complement the existing trees. And there are trees proposed within the estate roads between the car parking spaces and within the gardens. These features will help maintain the verdant aesthetic of the proposal. Furthermore, subject to conditions, the proposal will also protect the natural habitats for protected species. The Grade 2 listed Dyers is 36.5 metres away from the nearest house within plot 1 and 74.3 metres from the nearest 2.5 storey dwelling within plot 18 and 103 metres from the Grade 2 star listed modern house. This property also has a thick tree screen in front of it. The red star in this photograph is the approximate position of the dwelling within plot 1 in relation to Dyers. Dyer's side elevation will overlook the small woodland. This slide shows the slope of the land which falls in a southeasterly direction, which will also help limit the impact of the development on Dyers. This slide shows the proposed access which was found acceptable by the Highway Authority. Visibility sprays are compliant with current highway standards. A 1.5 metre unobstructed footpath on the eastern side of the A113 from the point of the proposed pedestrian access from the development running north to the proposed uncontrolled crossing will be provided. Other traffic calming measures on Stamford Rivers Road include gateway signage when entering the 30-mile-per-hour section, driving northbound on the A113, a surface material change on a section of the carriageway at the point where the speed limit changes to 30 miles per hour northbound. The provision of 30-mile-per-hour speed repeater signs, roundels painted on the carriageway to further remind drivers of the speed limit, potentially at or near the proposed locations of the repeater signs. This slide shows the contributions to be secured via Section 106 agreement with the applicant to facilitate the development. They can include 14 dwellings, over 61,000 for upgrades to Cooper Hill and Brentwood Road roundabout, provision of a vehicle activated sign and a maintenance fund of 10,500, upgrades to Ongar Health Centre through the provision of £62,336, £13,356 for ambulance service, 37,200 for community facilities, 2,800 for Chippinonga Library, £172,975 for open space and local equipped areas for play, and £12,060 for air quality mitigation to harm against the FSAC. This slide shows an artist's impression of the front elevation of the site. This slide shows a view of the development from the north near the Grade 2 listed dyers. You can see the plot 1 there. This slide shows the view from the footpath between the Suds Pond and the dwellings within plots 5 and 9. As outlined in the officer report, there will be some harm to the setting of the nearby listed buildings, but this harm is considered to be less than substantial, and there are sufficient public benefits to outweigh this harm. These include bringing forward development on an allocated site to meet local housing need, the density of the proposal being in keeping with the site-specific requirements of ONG R6 and the character of the wider area, the application providing close to policy-compliant affordable housing. There will be an improvement to the road safety in the area. Contributions to community facilities and public open space will be secured, which will benefit the wider community. The provision of high-quality, publicly accessible open space, which includes a green buffer and ecological protection for habitats of protected species, as well as making a positive contribution to the appearance of the development. Finally, by helping to contribute towards the council's housing delivery, approval will help provide a defence against inappropriate development on other sites within the Greenbelt. It therefore has an officer recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. We have 3 public speakers on this, and the first one is an objector, Derek Home.
No, Derek Rona.
Sorry? Oh, right. Remind you, so you've got 3 minutes.
That's my email address is Derek Home.
Sorry?
It's my email address is Derek Home.
Oh, right, I see. Democratic Services and sort that out.
I apologise for that.
Okay. I'm Derek Rona, representing the Martin Ash Action Group. I'm a retired chartered surveyor. The key objections to the development proposal: overdevelopment. The approved local plan allocation is 33 homes. The proposal is 36 homes. That's a 10% increase. The Ongar neighbourhood plan calls for reduced density on edge of settlement sites such as this. The net developable area after deducting the woodland and suds is approximately 1.05 hectares, an actual density of 34 dwellings per hectare or 13.9 per acre. That is a high density development. Inappropriate design. Featureless boxes entirely out of character with the Georgian and Victoria surrounds. Several of the surrounding homes have large plots of an acre or more and heritage value. Heritage impact. The RPS Heritage Impact Assessment claims only one elevation of the dyers is affected. That is misleading. Entire setting of any listed building is protected under heritage law, not just one elevation as implied. The most important and relevant statement is in the Conservation Officer's conclusions. We object to the proposed development. It is considered to lack a sensitive approach and high-quality design, failing to adequately mitigate the harm to the significance and setting of the affected designated heritage assets. Road safety. As published in The Guardian in 2010, this section of the road is the most dangerous road in the South East, and this was acknowledged by Highways. As per the leaflet distributed to the committee members, 14 road traffic accidents between 2012 and 2024 on just a few hundred metres of road. Last month, 2 further serious accidents, one just past Gray's Farm where the air ambulance was required, and one outside Dyers. In both instances, road closed, ambulances and police present. That is 5 accidents in the past 12 months alone on this short stretch of road. Included in the information provided are traffic speeds from Ardent's data. Up to 92.97% of vehicles exceed the speed limit. Maximum speed recorded 121.2 miles an hour. No safe crossing provided for school children or elderly. In front of Dyers, the proposed footpath will narrow at the telegraph pole and the yet-to-be-replaced 30-mile-an-hour speed sign, making wheelchair and pushchair access impossible without entering the road. As confirmed under a Freedom of Information request, Highways have no knowledge of any accidents in this location since 2012. However, the case officer relies on Highways safety recommendations. The safety proposal is yet more painted rondels on the road, a vehicular activated sign, which is clearly inadequate for the existing traffic speeds and volume. No physical traffic calming is proposed for the potential 100+ additional traffic movements per day from the site. Summary: the proposal fails to meet planning principles on the following: density, design, heritage protection, road safety, pedestrian access. We respectfully urge the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you. Our second speaker is from Ongar Town Council, Henry Walton. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Ongar Town Council would like to thank the developers and case officer for listening to our concerns about the initial proposals and significantly improving them throughout the statutory consultation period. These improvements are much appreciated and welcomed by the community. However, despite these improvements, Ongar Town Council still has significant concerns about the setting and context of this development. The proposals are for 36 houses in a paddock next to a Grade 2 listed building, Dyers, and opposite a Grade 2 star listed building, Marden Ash House. The scale and density of proposed development is out of keeping with existing street scene and is out of keeping with the site's edge of settlement former greenbelt location. Ongar Town Council agree with the Epping Forest Conservation Officer that these proposals will significantly impact the listed buildings nearby, in particular Dyers. The Conservation Officer concluded that there is substantial harm to Dyers, and this is in contradiction to the case officer's report. Ongar is a historic town steeped in history. While we accept the need for new development and new housing, the location of this development and the way it impacts the town heritage assets needs careful consideration and mitigation. Sadly, these proposals will leave Dyers dwarfed by development and will significantly alter the southern approach to Ongar in a way that detracts from Ongar's heritage assets. The position of the Epping Forest Conservation Team and Ongar Town Council is backed by both the local and neighbourhood plan policy. Epping Forest Plan Policy DM7 states, development proposals that affect any heritage asset or its setting should preserve and, wherever possible, enhance the significance of a heritage asset, having regard for special architectural or historic interest of its character, appearance, and the contribution made by its setting. Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Policy, Ongar ED3, mirrors this policy with similar wording. These plans do not preserve, let alone enhance, the heritage asset's character, appearance, or setting, and so clearly breach this policy, as the Epping Forest Conservation Officer concluded. Ongar Town Council therefore agree with the Epping Forest Conservation Officer and object to these proposals on conservation grounds. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We now have the application agent, Sean Martin.
Thank you.
Again, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good evening, members. My name is Sean Martin, and I'm the Planning Manager at Stonebond. The application before you is the culmination of months of collaborative work with your officers and the statutory consultees, ensuring the scheme is compliant and deliverable. Prior to this committee, we circulated a summary of our proposals, which included images of the scheme, a summary of the key benefits, and details of the concerns raised during the process and how we have addressed them. Essex County Council have confirmed the proposed access is safe and has been designed in line with highway standards. The county have endorsed the proposed new footway along the east side of Stamford Rivers Road and confirmed that the proposal is in line with highway standards. We are also proposing traffic calming measures to reduce vehicle speeds, which are supported by the County Council. Whilst the County Council cannot be in attendance this evening, I have received correspondence from them ahead of this meeting, and they have confirmed that they have received emails from the ejectors regarding the safety concerns and have provided a full response addressing all the points raised. Your officers are aware of the concerns raised and the County Council's responses to them. With regard to the impact on the listed buildings, the scheme from the outset had been designed to minimise impact on the heritage assets. Changes to the scheme have been made during the process to ensure that the impact on the listed buildings is low. The density of our proposal is 24 dwellings per hectare, which is considered appropriate given the site's edge of settlement location. Whilst the number of units is slightly higher above the approximate number of dwellings in the allocation, this is to be considered acceptable. We will be delivering much needed 22 market homes and 14 affordable homes. Both nationally and locally, we simply require more housing. Not just market housing, but there is a desperate need for social housing. There is a generation of young people that are being ignored, that can't get on the housing ladder due to the cost of homes and unaffordable mortgages. It is deeply concerning. The government have made house building a priority to get the economy moving, creating jobs in construction and addressing the housing shortage. The proposed development gives hope to individuals and families yearning for a place to call their own. Your officer has confirmed in the report that we produced a scheme that is policy compliant. I therefore respectfully ask that you accept your officer's recommendation so we can start delivering much needed new homes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ward councillors. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an allocated site, and I know that the people living nearby were quite disappointed when it actually came in the local plan. And it's also a pity that the developers put in an initial allocation before they actually consulted local people, the neighbourhood plan community group and the council. And that rather set the tone, I feel. However, having said that, they have worked hard to put quite a lot of changes in place. They've worked with Ongar Town Council, they've worked with Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Community Group and the residents. And I think there's two key areas here that need to be looked at very carefully. One is road safety, and we've heard about that. It was very useful to have a site visit because if you drive down the Stamford Rivers Road, you have a feeling of it being more of a slope down, but coming in and out of that access was very difficult, I felt, and I'm sure that the case officer felt the same. However, the site access is going to be slightly north of where the existing gate is, and the splays and things, I think, will give a better vision on that road. The other thing that we all know is that Essex Highways can only mandate a very low, what we consider a very low bar as far as road improvements and road safety. And I'm very pleased that the developers have agreed to additional road safety aspects, including, I think, which is very important because of the speeding, the vehicle-activated signage, the gateway signs, etc. And I want to just draw your attention to condition 28, I think it was, part E, which does refer to the revision that was supplied by the developer. And I think it says revision A on there, but I understand that that does not include one aspect which is now included, and perhaps the planning officer could make sure that all the inclusions of vehicle-activated signage and gateway things are included in those conditions. And I think the other thing that's very important in those conditions is that they must not be lessened in any way. They must be really strong and not be amended. Going on also just generally to policy compliance, it is policy compliant with housing mix now, including edge of settlement where you have maisonettes rather than flats, parking is compliant, the density, which is the local plan requirements, is edge of settlement 30 to 50 per hectare. But I want to come on to setting of listed buildings. Our listed buildings are really important heritage, and once things are actually spoilt, that is forever, basically. Unfortunately, it's rather a difficult one to define setting. In some countries, they have setting defined as a particular measurement. We don't here. The developers have moved things away from the boundary looking south. They've now got a woodland there, they've got a footpath that doesn't come close to their boundary, and they've moved plot 1. We would personally like to have had plot 1 removed altogether, but as it stands, it is a great improvement. I leave it obviously to you to decide whether you are going to refuse it on settings, but if you do refuse it on settings, I would request that you have plot 1 removed entirely. Thank you.
Thank you. No more, Councillor? Members, for discussion.
Thank you, Chair. I was able to go on the site visit and follow this through the whole planning process. And I'm glad to see that alterations have been made. I think it was difficult to get in and out of the site, but that's because it's a field and it's got a little gate there that is probably used once every 10 years by a tractor. Yeah, with the improvements, I think it will make the road safer. I think it needs to be made safer, and it is being made safer in this application. With regard to the settings of the house, we walked around the field, we walked where the houses were actually going to be and the effects on them. Yes, there is an effect. There is absolutely no doubt there is an effect. Whether it is substantial, I don't think it is. I think the developers made every move to do what they can to screen from the other buildings. Personally, I think it's a well-designed development. It's in the local plan, it's an allocated site, so we're not talking about whether this goes ahead. It will go ahead in some form. It may not go ahead in this form if the members decide differently. But I think, personally, I would be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you. With regards to the vehicle-activated sign as well, I think that's actually included in the 106 agreement, so there's provision made for that. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't able to go on the site visit due to work and short notice of being asked to stand in this evening. However, I do know the area and I've driven that road quite a lot, and I understand the feeling from residents regarding safety on the road. However, the access point is being moved. But I think an important point for residents to remember here is when we refer to the allocated site in the local plan at 33 and coming up at 36, the number that's on the local plan is actually on the site is an indicative number. It can be above or below. And under MPPF, obviously, we have to make the best use of the land that we can. And the developers seems to have taken that on board in as much as, yes, they've gone to 36. They could have gone a lot higher. They could have gone, you know, a lot more flats and things and changed the layout completely. And I think when we look at the plan, the layout to me looks quite sort of suggestive to an older type of development. So I'm hoping that it's going to blend in. I'm looking at the materials and that being used. It looks like they're trying to do a lot of shielding of the housing as well to the frontage, and the attenuation ponds to the rear. That looks like it's the flooding side of things being taken care of, and it's being considered with biodiversity as well. So in all, I think it's probably an appropriate development for that site as an allocated site in the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holly-Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. My point is just in relation to the affordable housing allocation. On previous larger sites on kind of edges of small towns and villages, we've asked for parish homes to be put in as an informative. I know it can't be put in as a condition, but I think it's quite a nice thing to do if the affordable housing goes to local people as a preference in the parish. So I'd just like to propose that informative. Thank you, if I've got anyone to second me.
Seconded, yeah. In favour of that informative being added?
Seven, four.
Thank you. Against? No, that's it. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I did against. Yeah.
Anybody against
Abstentions?
or abstaining? Sorry, I'm going to.
That's it.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Chairman. I need to be clear on this because
Right.
with votes.
So the parish homes proposal by Councillor Hollywood, seconded by Councillor Bedford. All those in favour? Sorry.
Can I clarify which parish? Because this is right on the border of Stanford Rivers Parish and Ongar Parish, and actually very close to a couple of other parishes as well.
Parish is, what does it come under? No, it's on the town. B. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
It's definitely in Ongar Parish and in the neighbourhood plan area of Ongar Parish.
Yeah, which is why I said on the border.
Right, so are we agreed that it's in Ongar? Thank you. So those in favour of that, please show.
8.
Those against? Abstentions?
1 abstention.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Chairman.
No, not at all. So that informative will be added to.
So, Chairman, the point being, of course, that if we do this in allocated sites, all our allocated sites are in urban areas or larger parishes. And if housing only goes to people who live in parishes which contain allocated sites, that leaves parishes which have no allocated sites and therefore potentially don't have access to that new housing. So I think it's important that the Council does take a strategic view of this as well as a site-by-site view.
Thank you.
Hi, as it was an informative suggestion, it is just a suggestion. It's not an enforceable thing as such, but it's just so the developer is aware. But yeah, I understand your point there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy with that explanation? Right, so the application before you is recommended for approval with conditions and subject to the 106 legal agreement and with the additional narrative added. All those in favour?
8, Chairman.
Those against?
0, Chairman.
Abstentions?
1, Chairman.
Therefore, that application is approved with conditions and subject to the 106 legal agreement. Thank you. Right, item 8 then is planning application EPF/2127/24 Sunnyside PT outside 956 Kents Lane, Northfield, Basset, Epping, CM16 6AX. And we're all staying as we are, yeah. And Mohammed will take us through this on Teams, please.
Thank you, Chair. So item 8 relates to Sunnyside in Northfield, Basset. This application is before members as the parish have raised an objection and they have registered to speak on the item this evening. The proposal is for a residential dwelling and this is an amended scheme to that recently allowed appeal as set out in the agenda. And the main changes are a slight increase in scale and overall height of the building by 700 millimeters and the change in orientation of the building from west to north. So here we have the location plan. Here's the site outlined in red. And here's the adjacent properties, Dowsets, a listed property. And you have Kent's Lane over here. So here's an aerial image of the site. So the existing building is just about here. It's barely visible because of the crown of the trees, but just over here. So here's a view to the site. Again, the building is over here. And you have the neighbouring property, Dowsets, over here. So here are the approved and proposed site plans. So on the left hand, on this side, we have the scheme allowed at appeal. So this is the red dashed line over here represents the existing outbuilding. The solid black line represents the replacement dwelling, which was allowed at appeal. And you can see it runs parallel to the boundary with Dowsets, which is located just over here. And you have the garden area over here and 2 car parking spaces. On the right-hand side, we have the proposed site plan, the amended scheme before members tonight. And the key changes are to the orientation of the building, sort of an L shape, and it's now facing north. You have changes to the garden, and the car spaces, parking spaces located over here, and it's set further away from the common boundary with Dowsets over here. So the blue line over here represents the appeal scheme, and you can see it's closer to the boundary, whereas the amended scheme is set further away. Here we have the approved and proposed elevations. So on the top is the approved scheme, a single-story structure, and at the bottom you have the amended scheme, slightly raised by 700 millimeters, and it's still a single-story structure. So just to summarize the merits of the case, officers consider the proposed building would not cause substantial harm to the openness of the green belt, and so is not inappropriate development within the green belt. Whilst the conservation team have raised concerns regarding the amendments, however, in light of the scheme allowed at appeal and the limited changes, officers do not consider there to be defendable grounds to refuse the scheme in this regard. Lastly, the proposal is no longer parallel to Dowsets, as shown on the slides, and is set further away from the common boundary by approximately 3.3 meters. The appeal scheme was set some 1.9 meters away, and there are no flank windows, so there would be no material loss of privacy to the occupiers at Dowsets. For these reasons, officers recommend granting conditional planning permission subject to a completed Section 106 legal agreement to secure the required mitigation measures towards the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation. Thank you, Chair. That's the end.
Thank you. Again, we have 3 public speakers on this. The first is David Lewis, the objector, and again, so you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I am the owner of Dowsets, which is on the boundary of the new proposed property. The property is, at the moment, to be built in a very large field, which makes me not understand why it is so close to my boundary of a listed house. In the original application, it was that the main building would be along the boundary of my house at Dowsets. In the second application, by changing to an L shape, it would minimise the impact of being adjacent to my property, and also it would lessen the risk to both Mr. Fletcher and Mrs. Fletcher and myself of noise or light pollution. So for me, I would accept the second proposal willingly, whereas the first proposal, first application, I did not think was suitable for the boundary as it was. As regards the second application, whilst I'm very happy to accept it, I would still suggest that since the field is possibly over 1.5 acres or 2 acres, why this second application, which I would accept, has to be actually on the boundary of my listed property. And from the plans, you would see just how close it is to my house. Why can't it be built a little distance further into the field, which would not have any impact other than to benefit me and Mr. Fletcher, and no other neighbour would have any objection, because of where the new position would be. So I implore the committee to consider that my views and that of Mr. Fletcher's in saying that number 2 application is significantly better than 1, but if you would still consider accepting that and moving the property slightly further from my boundary, when there is absolutely no need to put it next to me with, as I say, noise or light pollution or any other risks. My house is thatched, and I am concerned completely about any property that is close to my house, should there be a fire in that property. So that's another consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Via Teams, we've got Adriana Jones from Morton, Bobbingworth and Lavers Parish. Are you there?
I am.
Thank you. Again, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, Committee. When the original house was proposed in 2022, the Conservation Officer objected due to the harm it would cause to the special character and historic significance of the designated heritage asset Dowsets and its wider setting. Following revisions by the applicant, the Conservation Officer was subsequently able to support the proposal, which was eventually granted on appeal, subject to a number of conditions, including the removal of permitted development rights. The approved building on the site is 3 metres in height, and the inspector found it would not significantly increase the amount of development on the site and would be modest in height. The new proposals are 3.8 metres in height, a 27% increase, and have been determined by EFDC's own Conservation Officer to cause harm to the setting of the adjacent listed building Dowsets. This harm is classed as less than substantial, but the planning inspector feel that a 27% increase in height is still a moderate increase. According to the National Planning Policy Framework, proposals which have a less than substantial harm should be weighed against the public benefits. It is suggested that the public benefits upon which this harm is being weighed, in this case, is that it would create a new dwelling which would help the FDC meet and improve its housing targets. However, this benefit is not new. It already exists. It's there already because there's planning permission in place for a property. Thus, the only change that will occur if this planning permission is granted is that it will cause harm, as no new public benefits will be gained. In summary, the Parish Council urges the committee to consider exactly what benefit would be gained by granting this permission. A permission that would be detrimental to a listed property, a permission that the Conservation Officer is unable to support, especially when a suitable, acceptable planning permission already exists. This application is contrary to Part F of Policy DM7 of the adopted local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker on this is the applicant or agent, Martin Patty, in person. Again, sir, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, just to confirm, this already has permission and we can build the previous scheme tomorrow. But we are hoping that with some minor changes, it will be this is now an improved scheme. The orientation of the bungalow has been changed from being linear in form, facing the boundary of Dowsets, the listed building, to be at 90 degrees to this boundary to have less an effect on Dowsets. There are also some other minor changes to the plans. These are very minor modifications to an already approved scheme. Our heritage consultants have confirmed that the proposal is considered to be neutral in terms of the effect on the listed building, and it preserves the setting of the listed building and results in no harm in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. This also accords with the decision of the appeal inspector when the proposal was granted in January 2024. It should be noted that at the rear of Dowsets, the listed building, and our proposed dwelling, there is a large garage block and an outbuilding and also a mature evergreen hedge. And there is no visibility of the proposal from the listed building and therefore no visual effect on the listed building. Whilst the Parish Council objected to this proposal, and it is accepted there's a small increase in the floor area, but this is only 8 square metres increase. It is a small, modest 2-bedroom dwelling of only 98 square metres, which is just about 1,000 square feet. It's very small. The minor increase in height provides a better elevation to the property, and is only an increase of 700 millimetres, which is approximately 2 feet. The bungalow provides modest accommodation for my clients and supports Epping Forest Council's policy of retaining bungalows for an ageing population. The planning officer supports the proposal, and the principle of the proposal has been supported by the planning inspector at appeal. And since that time, the new planning policy framework has changed the description of the effect on the green belt by stating that there has to be substantial harm with any proposal for it not to gain planning consent. And the council's planning officer has confirmed that this will not cause substantial harm, and therefore it complies with the national planning policy framework requirements. The proposal, by reorientating, has created less of an effect on the adjoining property due to the garage building and the dense hedge between them, and this would not be seen from the listed building. The minor changes, therefore, are, in our opinion, an improvement over what was previously approved at appeal, and this proposal, therefore, should be supported by the Planning Committee. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No, I don't think we have any ward. No. So, members. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. Coming from the neighbouring ward, not the actual ward, I drive this lane nearly every day, and I must say that I've been down Kent's Lane, and the property itself is quite remote in as much as it's a single storey, the existing building. Looking at the history of this property and the fact that it does back onto Dowsets, I know Dowsets as well from the main road. From the plans here, it does look like it backs up to the garage, not the main house. Now, I don't know if the officers have got a picture of Dowsets from above or if there's a picture that shows where the garage is in relation, but it does look to me like there's a large tree line that runs along that from the first image that we saw up on the screen. And when you take into consideration this is really turning the body of the house 90 degrees with a slight increase in volume and a slight increase in roof height, I don't think it's materially going to affect the actual size of the site. I understand what the resident is saying about it's a 1 acre site and move it further afield. But there again, we have to deal with the application that's before us this evening. And the application this evening is to turn that property around. I take on board the principles of the MPPF and about the substantial harm should not be, you know, if it did have substantial harm, it wouldn't get planning permission. In this case, I don't think it does. And I'm minded to support this application.
Thank you. Are there any other members? Councillor Whitehouse.
Yes, I wanted to pick up the point made by the Parish Council, which struck me as well when I read the report, which is the justification that overcomes the harm to setting the listed building is said to be the delivery of housing. But there's no net increase in housing compared to the extant planning permission. So I'm sort of wondering how that follows.
Yep, Councillor Chair, if I may answer.
Yep.
So this is a new scheme. We're looking at a replacement, a new dwelling in lieu of an existing outbuilding. So it is still delivering a net gain in dwelling, and officers have taken a balanced judgment and consider, you know, when you look at the scheme allowed as appeal and the changes, it's not going to be defendable at appeal in officers' view.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's one of those strange ones where, as somebody mentioned earlier, the original one could be built tomorrow. I took heart from the owner of Dowsett's comment that he prefers Scheme 2 to Scheme 1. I'd certainly take that on board. It's heartening to hear that somebody's actually not objecting just on the basis of objecting to everything. I think that's commendable. I think it's a better scheme than Scheme 1. I can see no planning reason really to not approve this.
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, look, I second that we can't, I don't find any planning reasons, but I do think they should potentially, if it's approved, look to move it further away from the border, because I do think it's right on his property. I do think it's a bit antisocial doing that, to be honest. If they could move it further away, I think they should.
Thank you. I'm sure it's to do with utilities and other various services.
It's the legal plot.
Yeah. Councillor Wiskin.
Yeah, my only concern is that the increase in volume and the height is not opening the door for another development and increasing by stealth. So I have concerns about that.
Unfortunately, that's not before us. So, members, the application before us is to be, recommendation is to approve with conditions and subject to the 106 legal agreement. All those in favour?
At 7.
Against?
2.
Abstentions?
Nil.
Therefore, that application is approved with conditions and subject to the 106 legal agreement. Thank you. Application 9, I think, Councillor Wiskin, you have to move across the chamber. Yeah, and Councillor Kaufmann a substitute. And I've lost my bit of paper. I don't know where it went.
It disappeared down the hole.
It's gone down there somewhere. All my information. Loads of stuff. Yeah. No, there's loads of stuff down the back. You can't get to it from the front, man. You need one of those little picker things.
Forgot to pack it.
Councillor Kaufmann, have you any declarations of interest to make? No. Thank you. So, therefore, agenda item 9 is planning application EPF stroke 0064 stroke 25, land adjacent to 2 The Uplands, Loughton, IG 10 1NH on pages 54 to 65 of the agenda. And Mohammed, you'll take us through this one as well.
Thank you, Chair. So item 9 relates to land adjacent to the Uplands in Loughton. The application is before members as there have been 5 objections against the application and the recommendation is for approval. The proposal is for a single dwelling and this is an amended scheme to that recently dismissed at appeal. The main change is the reduction from 2 dwellings to 1. So here we have the location plan. Here's the site outline in red. So here's number 2, the Uplands. So here's an aerial view of the site. So the site is located over here. And this is number 2. So here's a different view. Again, the site over here. And number 2 and its garden over here. So here's the proposed site plan. So this scheme is for a single dwelling. It's of a modest scale and it has ample spacing around the property on all sides, to the front, both sides, and to the rear. There's an existing parking space over here. Proposed for 2 spaces over here. You have cycle storage over here. So here are the proposed elevation. So here are the street scene elevation. So the top represents the existing street scene. Middle is the proposed, and the bottom one is the scheme dismissed at appeal. So you can see the key difference from 2 dwellings to 1, and the design kind of mirrors the adjacent property over here. And there's more visual gap around the properties compared to the previous scheme. So here's image from the street, the site over here, and number 2 over here. There's a different view of the site. And here's a CGI. So this is the proposed dwelling. And number 2 over here. Here's a different view. And yeah, here's a closer detail of the scheme dismissed at appeal, the 2 dwellings. And again, a closer detail of the elevations. Just to summarize the case, officers consider the proposal has overcome the previous reason for refusal relating to design, neighbouring amenity and flood risk as set out in detail in the agenda. And for the reasons set out, officers recommend granting conditional planning permission subject to a completed Section 106 legal agreement to secure the required mitigation measures towards the FSAC. Thank you, Chair. That's the end.
Thank you. We have a speaker from Loughton Town Council, Carol Davis. You have 3 minutes, madam.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members. My first comment is, isn't it amazing what you can achieve with a fisheye lens? Right, LTC wish to object to this wholly unsuitable proposal for a new self-build dwelling to the Uplands. It's a resubmission of the previously refused application. We have carefully reviewed the current proposal and listened to public feedback, including 7 letters of objection and a public address during our meeting. The committee reached a unanimous objection to this application, finding that it fails to adequately resolve the concerns raised in the earlier refusal, which were also upheld by the appeal inspector. The application continues to represent what can only be described as extreme garden grabbing. The Uplands is characterised by substantial homes set within generous plots. The proposal makes only minor dimensional changes from the previous version and remains out of keeping with the local character. As such, it contravenes policy DBM 9 of the Epping Forest Local Plan and the MPPF, which emphasise the importance of high-quality design and developments that positively contribute to local character. Notably, the applicant has not submitted a contextual plan showing the relationship between the proposed dwelling and its neighbouring buildings. This omission is significant. It prevents proper assessment of proximity and potential impacts on neighbouring properties. The limited rear garden space will result in an increased sense of enclosure for residents at both 2 and 4 the Uplands, negatively affecting their outlook and privacy. We are also concerned about the rear window proposed at 1.7 metres in height, which overlooks neighbouring properties. The lack of clarity regarding whether this window will be fixed or obscured glass raises serious privacy issues, both for the neighbours and for future residents of the proposed property. The parking area is insufficient to meet Essex County Council guidelines, which recommend a minimum width of 3 metres between structures for parking, yet the proposed design only allows 2.5 metres. This will force vehicles onto the street, adding further pressure on road parking. This is already very limited due to the neighbouring nursery and walking distance to the high road. Further concerns include increase in flood risk due to insufficient surface water drainage, breaching policy DM16. The proposal also lacks any biodiversity gain, in fact quite the opposite. A mature garden was cleared in advance of the prior application, a move that continues to have detrimental effects on local wildlife, including the stag beetle population reported in the area, and the applicant fails to acknowledge any of that. Also, the applicant no longer even owns the property to the Uplands. This calls into question their eligibility under the self-build criteria and therefore the fundamental premise of this application itself. Finally, the stress caused to the neighbours by this long drawn-out process of multiple wholly unsuitable applications over years cannot be overestimated.
If you can wind up, please.
Yeah, I'm informed that the direct neighbours missed the registration time to speak this evening, again largely due to stress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have the applicant or agent, Jenny Thompson. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jenny Thompson and I'm here this evening with the applicant, the former owner of the donor dwelling at 2 Uplands. The application under consideration this evening seeks permission for a 2-bedroom dwelling for the applicant and their elderly parents on land previously forming part of the plot at 2 Uplands. The site was subject to a previous application, EPF 292820, a proposal that tested the concept of residential development of the plot for 2 semi-detached properties. This was refused by the council for the 5 reasons outlined in the officer's report. At appeal, 4 of those reasons were upheld, and this application returns a revised scheme to the council and we believe overcomes those 4 reasons that the inspector upheld. Turning first to reason 1, character and appearance, the proposal is now a single unit. This is more in keeping with the scale and form of the other properties in the immediate area. The site is now more spacious when compared to the previous scheme and relative to the immediate neighbouring properties 2A, one half of the bungalow at the rear of number 2, and indeed when looking at the properties opposite also. The revision in scale has allowed improvements to the appearance and a significantly greater offset to the donor property at 2 Uplands. The revisions to design allow less bulk when viewed from number 2A. As shown in the officer report and the images taken today that were provided within the officer's presentation. Reason 2, loss of parking. This reason was not upheld by the inspector and highways have no concerns and the plans provide for 2 parking spaces. Reason 3, neighbouring living conditions. The inspector deemed 2 houses together resulted in loss of outlook from neighbouring properties. The revised single plot is offset to a greater degree from both neighbours. The design is reduced in scale, therefore has a lesser impact. The only rear-facing window is a high-level window at 1.7 metres high in the bedroom area as a secondary light source, and this is proposed by condition 5 to be obscure glazed. The new home also would sit forward of the rear wall of number 2A, meaning that to see the home from 2A, you would need to be in their garden looking back towards the street. Reason 4, drainage. This was a technical matter that has been overcome with the provision of suitable information. And reason 5 is the EFDC SAC issue that resulted in such significant delays from 2020. This is now overcome with the standard mitigations. Members, the proposal before you this evening has taken all the concerns from the application lodged in 2020 that was refused finally in 22, and we're seeking to find means to resolve those. The original proposals sought 2 houses, now only 1 is put forward. Circumstances have changed and the applicant seeks to occupy this plot themselves. This is designed as a dwelling to reflect the applicant's needs and that of their parents, and we note that there were concerns that my client is not on the self-build register, but we would like to point out to members that he had already been investing in a plot that was identified. Therefore, the lack of a perceived need for land parcel meant that he considered no need to register on that self-build register. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All councillors. Councillor Wiskin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to reiterate some of the points made by the Loughton Town Council. I don't think the appearance of being cramped has been addressed. I still think it is cramped, and that contravenes DM9 of our policies, and I think it's still harmful. Question perhaps for the planning officer. There were outstanding objections from the City of London. Question perhaps after I've spoken is, have they been addressed? Thirdly, the proposal is taking almost 3/5 of the back garden of number 2 on a series of gardens which are similar up the whole of the uplands. I think that is, it is garden grabbing. It's a bad precedent. And I think it has a strong adverse impact on numbers 2, and it's irrelevant who actually owns it currently. That could be sold tomorrow. And number 4, perhaps more significantly. I think the statement that the distance has been decreased by 600 millimetres from number 4 is irrelevant, to be honest. That's the width of a washing machine, and I think that's insignificant, and I think it does adversely affect the neighbours. So I would recommend that the committee object to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you. Whenever I look at these, I always think, does it pass the smell test? And we've consulted 17 neighbours and we've had 24 objections. These are all big houses with big gardens, and it's going to be putting quite a big plot onto a very small plot with minuscule garden, and then leaving number 2 with basically no garden. So I have serious concerns about this. I will be voting against it, and I have a load of reasons for that, but most of them have been raised today. But if we do approve it, can we make sure the privacy glass point has been put in? But, yeah, thank you.
Any other members? Councillor Colquhoun.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just echoing my colleague's points. The point that I really can't get my head round is the indication that the rear window is a high level window. I mean, I'm too old to really know millimetres, but I think 1700 millimetres is 5.5 feet. So if my maths is correct, the average person that walks past that window is going to be about 5.5 feet tall. We'll be able to look directly into the rear garden of number 4. So I don't think that there's any sensible person that would say that that is adequately overcome the privacy concerns. I get the idea that they can put privacy glass on, but if it happens to be a hot summer or whatever, the window's going to be open. You can't have an obscure open window. So I think that does need a bit further thought. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I've listened sort of carefully to this. I mean, I'm not clear with regard to the glass what the concern is that Condition 5 doesn't overcome, but it'd be helpful to hear a bit more on that from the planning officer. I mean, I also noted the points about self-build. I mean, that seems to me to be a slight red herring. I don't think the justification of this is that it is a self-build house. I think it's, a dwelling. And fundamentally, it's a house on a house-sized plot. And yes, clearly, if you put a house on a plot which is currently less developed, it will look more developed after a house has been built. But it is a built-up area. I would, however, like to know about the... I may have missed it in the report. I was looking for it, about the amenity of the gardens. I mean, I know there's an extent to which, you say, well, not everyone wants a big garden, and if people, buy a house, they know the size of the garden when they buy it. But on the other hand, we do have amenity standards for a reason, and I'd just like to be clear how this, to what extent this meets the council's amenity standards. But overall, now it's one house rather than 2 houses. It looks a fairly sort of standard bit of infill to me, but I'll listen to what other people say.
Mohammed, you want to come back on the
Yeah.
amenities?
Just starting with the obscure glass, there is a condition for it to be obscure glass, but it can be modified to add in window restrictors, so it can't be open. It can only be open up to a certain angle. So members can add that in if they wish to. In terms of self-build, the definition of self-build is whoever's intending to live in it on the land, they have input into the design, which is the case here. So this would meet the self-build definition. The applicant has input into the design and will be living on the land if consented and built. So it is self-built. And the third point, in terms of amenity garden sizes, the adopted local plan is not prescriptive. It does come down to planning judgment, and the proposed dwelling has some 100 square meters of garden land and equivalent retained to the uplands, the donor house. So officers do consider that there is ample garden space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I don't know if the officer can tell us, but according to condition 14, it refers to those windows that are being discussed. and it says the privacy should be level 3 obscurity or equivalent, and no part of those windows that is less than 1.7 metres above the internal floor level of the room which it is installed shall be capable of being opened. So we know from the plans definitely that those windows are set above 1.7, which from the description in the conditions means that they could be opened, but any window below 1.7 metres can't be opened. Is that correct from that condition?
That's correct, yeah. So normally in the bathroom windows you have the windows that you can just open the top, which are normally above 1.7 metres. I mean, it's not clear if the windows are going to be open from the top or from the side. So the agent can clarify, or we can see further details, but we can add in the window restrictors if it's to be open sideways.
With that in mind, can we, if we do approve this, can we leave it that officers are to sort that particular condition out and make sure that it is windows 1.7 metres, they're fixed shut? Because it's going to be bang on the line of 1.7 metres, I expect. So we leave that condition to officers if that's appropriate.
I think it's actually covered in condition 5 as it stands. Yeah. Condition. No, page 62. Yeah. Yeah.
If I can, while we're... Can I... If whilst we're looking at that, I think the officer's idea of a restricted opening is probably a good one, and I think we could leave them to do that, put that wording in. Yeah, yeah. Councillor Matthews.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Contrary to a lot of the other opinions shared this evening, I really don't see much of an issue with this site. I can completely see why the 2 dwellings were rejected, but looking at the street scene, looking at what's proposed, yeah, I understand the points around gardens and people dividing up gardens, and that the rest of the sites along there have all got large gardens, but they haven't all got road access, so I can't see there being a concern about everyone carving up their gardens to build houses. There was already a road access at this point. It went into an outbuilding that it looks like on Google Earth here, and I think, you know, it's not there is obviously, as Councillor Whitehouse said, the amenity space regulations, but you know, people are changing in what they're desiring. You know, some people are looking for less garden space, and really, you know, what the effect that has on the value of the house, and that isn't really what we're here to judge. We're here to judge if it conforms with the planning rules, and I can't see anything that we've been shown tonight that contradicts any of the planning regulations. So unless I hear something to the contrary after my comments, then I'll be looking to support this application.
Any further members? Councillor Owen.
Just on that point, there's not much amenity space, and the SAC is right next to it, so it's going to encourage people into the SAC, and the impact on the SAC can't be ignored here either, if we're saying, oh, there's not much amenity space, but they can go into the forest instead.
Right, the officer's recommendation is to approve with conditions, subject to a section 106 legal agreement, which I'm sure would entail the SAC mitigation. All those in favour, please show.
5 in favour.
All those against?
4.
Abstentions?
0.
The application is therefore approved with conditions, and we leave that to the officers to beef up the conditions and subject to 106 legal agreement. Thank you. Agenda item 10, again you want to sit over there, is EPF 0289/25, 66 England's Lane, Loughton, IG 10 2QQ on pages 66 to 80 of the agenda. And Marie-Claire will be taking us through this one.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the demolition of the existing house at 66 England's Lane and the replacement... one moment. And the replacement with 2 3-bedroom, 2-storey semi-detached properties. This item is before the committee due to the number of objections received. This slide shows the site location and an aerial photo, and there is a range of both semi-detached and detached properties along England's Lane visible in this aerial picture. This is the existing layout of the house, showing the large spreads of the existing property. The proposal will consist of 2 floors, and then with a storage and a study room within the proposed roof slopes. You will also, apologies, I just need to go back. You'll also note on this slide the staggered building line with the front and the rear building lines at different levels. This is considered to create a junction between the more forward number 68 property and the more set back number 62, highlighted with the pointer. The proposal has been designed in a traditional style with prominent gables and bay windows. And the site has a very relevant history with 2 past planning applications. The first in 2008, just shown on the slides now, which is exactly the same as the scheme before you this evening. This was refused originally, but then allowed on appeal. And then a follow-up application in 2013, which again was the same proposal, and this was approved in the summer of 2014. Both of these have expired and have not been implemented, but it is clear that the scheme before committee today has been found acceptable in the past. Finally, there's some images of the street scene. This application has been recommended for approval subject to committees. I'm going to hand back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. There are two public speakers on this item. The first from Loughton Town Council, Carol Davis. Again, 3 minutes, thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. LTC wish to object to the proposed application concerning a historic property on England's Lane. This building is not just bricks and mortar, it is a landmark of great heritage value to the area. Its architectural character contributes significantly to the distinct identity of England's Lane. The proposed demolition and redevelopment would strip the street of a key part of its history, with lasting harm to the visual character and street scene. This runs counter to policy DM9 of the Epping Forest Local Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, which require developments to preserve and enhance the local character and make a positive contribution to place. In addition to heritage concerns, this site presents serious highway safety issues. The property boundary fronts directly onto the highway with no intervening pavement. It sits at one of the narrowest and most congested points on England's Lane, a stretch already plagued with speeding and parking pressures. To make matters more sensitive, a children's nursery is located immediately next door. Introducing construction activity and new development here would only intensify the existing traffic and safety risks. We also wish to highlight that the applicant has referenced a previous appeal decision. However, that decision is now outdated, predating both the adoption of the 2023 local plan and significant changes in the area's environmental and community landscape. Therefore, the proposal must be considered afresh under today's more robust planning and sustainability standards. Demolishing this property is not environmentally sustainable. The loss of the existing structure would release substantial embodied carbon into the atmosphere, which contradicts the push for more climate-conscious development. Moreover, the additional vehicle movements associated with demolition and new construction pose a further risk to the integrity of the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation. In conclusion, the committee unanimously objected to this application for its harmful impact on our heritage, our environment and our community safety, and we hope you will support our objection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As you'll see from the officer's report, this has got a very long history going back to 2008. The design of the scheme is exactly the same as it was then, and the architect at the time tried very hard to make sure it fitted in with the actual streetscape. And I think your officer talked about where it was being set back, use of materials which are traditional to the street. It's a large plot, as you can see from the site plan. It's about twice the size of any of the other houses in the street. And we've not tried to overdevelop or any other purpose really. So I hope members will support it. The officer's report is very comprehensive, so I won't repeat things which are in there, and hope you actually will support the application, which the applicant would like to get on and build. Thank you.
Thank you. All councillors. Councillor Wiskin.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we've got to look at it from the point of view of what's changed between the previous approval and now, and the answer is probably there's huge more pressure to put houses up. My objection would be on the sustainability piece about knocking down a perfectly sustainable building and the carbon dioxide impact on the area. Yes, it is a very busy corner. I think some could argue that putting parking into the two new properties would possibly be a benefit, although access is clearly a problem. But the problem is along the whole of that road, and I'm not sure that it exacerbates that problem a lot more. But I would be torn on the committee which way to go.
Thank you. Members. Sorry, Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I think that we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. I can't really see any planning grounds for refusal. In fact, I see it the opposite way, in that the inspectors come down in favour of this in the past. I take on board Councillor Wiskin's comments. However, I know this particular road and this area very well, as I used to live in that area. And I do take it that England's Lane is a make-up of many different types of houses. It looks like the agent is trying to blend this in with what is next door and in the local area as well. And I feel that, yes, we'd be stuck here really of trying to find a planning grounds for refusal. It seems that with the previous history behind it, I think that we have to go along with approval for this at the moment. Not saying we have to, but you know, it should be taken into account when we come to the decision.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, it's just a shame because it's actually a really good-looking house to knock it down, to be honest. But yeah, my only comment would be please get on and do it. It's been nearly 20 years this has been going on, to just get on and get it finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Councillor Whitehouse first. Do you want to
Oh,
go?
right, okay. Yeah. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks. I would be interested to hear a response to the point about the embodied carbon, because I mean, it's something that's sort of come up when sort of some of the high-profile national applications, like Marks and Spencer in Oxford Street, but it's not something that I'm aware of that's particularly a local plan policy that we've got. You know, although I won't have sympathy with the point, I'm not sure it really is embedded in the planning framework, but it'd be helpful to have a sort of authoritative answer on that point, because it does come up fairly regularly in objections.
Yeah, we haven't really got a policy that would support not demolishing buildings. Obviously, people want to demolish them to make better use of existing land or better use of existing buildings, and we haven't got a policy to stop that in terms of any sort of carbon issues. No.
Tim Matthews first.
Yeah.
Hold on, Tim first.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I fear I might become unpopular with residents and members of Loughton Town Council, but I agree. This one again, I can't see any issue with it. I think if anything, it's going to make an improvement to a pinch point in the road, and I think the actual staggering is actually going to soften the sort of impact on the street scene. I cannot see any reason why this can't be fully supported. So unless anything changes, I'll be supporting this application for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Yeah, I was just going to come back on what the officer was saying there. Although we don't have a policy, we do know that, yes, due to the initial knocking down, there will be an escape of carbon of some extent. However, when we take into account the 2 new houses are going to be built with modern materials, thermally insulated blocks, etc., overall, over the next 10 years, this probably will contribute more to a reduction in carbon than the existing house if it was left there. So it's a bit of a balancing act, really.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick one. I had a very brief flick through to try and pick up the earlier appeal decisions using the appeal case reference system, and I couldn't pull it off. So what I just wonder if the officer could clarify is the reason why the previous appeals were granted. I mean, it wasn't something along the lines of no 5-year housing land supply, which I gather we now have. Perhaps you can just advise, because I wouldn't want to go along with the decision that was granted at the time on the basis of obviously no 5-year supply, which we apparently now have. So I think we would consider the scheme on different merits. So, thank you.
I think you find that it was actually approved by Planning Committee South several years after that, after the appeal.
I haven't got the appeal statement in front of me, but from what I understand, it was to do with design, and the inspector felt the design was acceptable, and also due to highways grounds with the lack of pavement at the front. But again, the inspector felt that was acceptable because other properties have the same setup, so it was not anything to do with supply.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I think probably summing up, Chair, I didn't declare an interest, but we did actually look at this property 40 plus years ago to actually purchase, and we didn't. The demolition sustainable development argument would not hold any water as a reason for not accepting this development. It wouldn't stand up. We've got nowhere to go. And Councillor Bedford's made the point I was going to make about 2 new modern houses and modern standards. And again, like several members have said, I can see no planning reason to object to this.
Thank you. Right, members, the officer recommendation is to approve the conditions and subject to a 106 legal agreement. All those in favour, please show.
6, Chairman.
All those against?
1.
Abstentions?
1.
That application is therefore approved with conditions and subject to the 106 legal agreement. Thank you. Yeah, if you play musical chairs. No.
Playing musical chairs. Playing musical chairs.
Right, for the benefit of the webcast, Councillor Wiskin has rejoined the committee and Councillor Owen has crossed the floor. So agenda item 11 then is EPF/04/0625, the installation of a number 1 BT Street hub and on the footpath outside 222 High Road, Loughton, an easting of 542322 and a northing of 196358. And Marie-Claire will take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for a BT street hub located on the pavement outside of number 222 High Road in Loughton. It is before the committee due to an objection from the Town Council, who have registered to speak. As you can see from this aerial view, this is a wide section of pavement, and the hub will be located close to the road edge, just in this location here. The next slide shows the existing situation and a CGI of the street hub in position, just located beside the bus if you can't quite see. And this slide shows the proposal in elevation, showing the width of the pavement in this location and the other street furniture, most noticeably the lighting. This application has an officer recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one public speaker from Loughton Town Council, John Riley. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Chair and members. We have strongly objected to this application because, and it's quite clear there, that the sign is right on the sight line as you approach the junction. So the committee has objected to this, stating that the street hub is a large illuminated sign, 3 metres high. The proposal would result in a negative impact at that point, significant light pollution. You've got the amenity of the residents living above the dwellings, both adjoining and across, that would be impacted. More importantly, the position is right close to the road, so anyone approaching the junction, and there's a very busy junction and a crossing, where you do have cars racing up to the junction, hoping to jump the lights. Would there be distractions with it being so close to the road? We think it is highly inappropriate that it is in that location. It would be a lot better if it was moved inboard and remove the distraction. Members also felt a smaller screen sited further back in, or maybe even against the wall, which you saw on one of the earlier slides, would be less intrusive on the streetscape and less distracting for drivers. We also consider, is there really a need for it? Obviously, what BT are looking to do is take advantage of existing infrastructure in that position, but they could move their inward. But there's an upward trend at the moment in mobile screen time consuming, the estimated number of advertising that's being done across all the media, and nearly something like 25,000 in 2028 is forecasted, mainly driven by increased mobile usage and not necessarily by this sort of advertising. So we would actually question the need for it. There are other street hubs that BT have installed on the high road, and they have followed when there's been objections. They've taken on board our comments and moved the hubs either inboard or to satisfy our concerns, and so we would like this to be supported in our objection for them to reconsider the position of the street hub. So we actually request your support so that they will reconsider.
Thank you.
We're not actually against necessarily having a street hub, but...
Thank you. If you can both turn your microphones off, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ward Councillor, Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thanks. Only a couple of comments on this one. I just think when is enough enough? We've already got one of these further down the high street. We've got another electronic one further up. We've got bus advertising as well on the high street. You know, what happens if they want another one, another one, another one? At what point do we say enough's enough? I just feel we're getting too many now. Granted, maybe this one is acceptable, but I do echo the thoughts on safety. He's right by a really busy junction with the Morrisons. It's also Staples Road School is at the end of that road, so you have a lot of school children crossing there. It only needs to go wrong once, and it could be really, really bad. I would prefer they moved it, just for safety reasons, because it's right next to a very busy crossing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Chairman, I think there's hope for me to return to Loughton at last. Because I really don't like this at all. I really think there's concerns having it that close to the road. You know, anyone who travels through Loughton High Street knows that there is a lot, the traffic is very slow and steady, and it's very, very common for people to cross the road not at the specified junctions. Now, I know that's incorrect and they shouldn't be doing that. However, it is very common in Loughton High Street, more so than many other places. So when looking at that image, first thing I thought of, if someone walks out from behind that, you know, you're just an accident waiting to happen. Personally, I absolutely despise these things. I don't think we should be having BT basically capitalising on their existing infrastructure to profit from advertising, which is fundamentally what they're actually for, what they're trying to do. You know, if it's about Wi-Fi and about that, you know, it can be moved away from the road. It doesn't need to be there. I'll strongly object to this on the grounds of safety being far too close to the road, but we'll voice my opinion that I really do not like these and will not be supporting them anywhere. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wiskin.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's just the proximity of that, the object. I don't have any objection to the actual signage. I just have an objection to where it is. I actually went and stood there this afternoon, and although the road was fairly busy, the inlet is an outlet from a parking bay, so cars are coming out from there, and they'll be concentrating looking this way rather than what's ahead of them, and I think it was an added distraction. It should be inset, and if that is grounds to reject it, I would accept and reject it.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I've rather got the impression this was an advertising board with the incidental benefit of some communications infrastructure rather than communications infrastructure that, you know, has the incidental benefit of advertising generation. You know, I had the same concerns as other members about the increased street clutter, but I mean, I listened to Loughton members being, you know, relaxed about the principle, if concerned about the siting. I do see a benefit from the removal of the kiosks, and you know, that is something that does actually slightly change my view on this, that, you know, removing defunct kiosks, which Owen and I saw with a smaller, although still not particularly attractive bit of infrastructure, you know, is a net benefit. So I think with that, I'm persuaded about the principle of the item. And I take on board the comments about the highways, but again, I think we're rather in the hands of Essex highways on that particular issue.
Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. There's only so much we can say about these street signs, but there is one I've just picked up in the proposal where it says, as part of the proposal, 3 existing phone kiosks will be removed. 1 outside 167 High Road, Loughton, and 2 in Woodford Green. They've got nothing to do with us, Woodford Green, so I don't know why that's even mentioned. I'm sort of minded to go with what people are saying, the other members here. I do actually know that lay-by as well, and obviously it is quite close to the corner. I think also we are getting pavements now more and more cluttered with street furniture that can become a hindrance to other members of society, i.e. blind people, etc. And I do think Councillor Matthews is quite right, that is quite dangerous. It's the last bay where you are pulling out of that bay to approach the traffic lights, and you are mindful of what's on your outside, not what's on the inside. And it is quite a dangerous location. And I'm minded to go with members if they're minded to refuse this application.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with everything that's been said on this tonight, but my concern is ECC Highways have no objection, and they consider under their policies it would not be detrimental to highway safety. So if we are going to refuse this, I think we need a better reason to refuse it than the sight lines for cars or whatever, because ECC Highways have no objection. Yeah, I don't like it where it is. I've got no objection to it being closer to the buildings or even on the buildings, I think one of the parish town councillors suggested. So I don't know whether we can approve this but ask for a different location. I presume we can't.
I wonder if we might ask the officer, Essex Highways are more concerned with the highway, not necessarily concerned with the pavement. So could we possibly raise an objection on the grounds that it's obstruction to pedestrians as they approach the highway? I wonder if officers might comment.
They do comment on safety, but they're not specific about where that safety is. I have to be honest. They're talking about the safety of, I'm going to say the highway, but I do think they mean pedestrians as well who are going to enter into the highway. So they say there's no safety issues. But in terms of your point about people perhaps walking into it, that could probably more maybe lean towards like street clutter in that respect. So sort of the design and character rather than a highways reason.
Councillor Holly-Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman Nigel. Sorry, Councillor
Go on.
Bedford, did you want to come back
No,
on
no,
that point?
you do that because I think you're just about to put forward a proposal.
I was just wondering whether it's worth having a conversation with BT and potentially deferring this item to try and get them to put it in another location. I mean, I agree with all the comments made this evening. I don't have a kind of philosophical objection to the use of these hubs, but I do have an objection to the location, having driven past it very regularly. I was being driven rather than driving. But yeah, so my proposal would be that we defer to have conversations with BT. I mean, they're a big national company. They've got big public affairs teams. I'm sure they'd be willing to have a conversation. Well, I hope they'd be willing to have a conversation.
Thank you. Have we a seconder for that? Yeah. All those in favour of deferral?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. That item is therefore deferred for the officer to converse with BT.
Just for clarification, you would just like it moved away from
Near
the
to the
road
road.
edge? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Right, before we go on to any other business, which I'm sure there isn't, I'm sure you'll all join with me to send our best wishes and a wish of speedy recovery to Graham Courtney. So, I know other committees have said their bits. So, is there any other business?
No other business, Chairman.
I therefore close this meeting at 20:42. Thank you. Yeah, but if I just shove it against the wall, there ain't a problem, is there?